moving on to the next question. I don't know what happened on the stage when Mr. Modi was there and Mr. Stalin started listing out some of these things that he wanted the center to do it and all that, right? So what do you think about that? What is your perspective?
So what it is like, so there is always this narrative in Tamil Nadu, right? Whenever DMK is not part of the central government in a coalition or so, or in an alliance as such. You could hear this from the 1950s and 60s, where Annadurai gave that famous slogan of Vadakku Vaalgirathu, Tekku Theigirathu, which means the northern part is living and expanding, and then the southern part is contracting. So from that time, that slogan is kept alive whenever DMK is not part of the central government in an alliance as such. So again, the kind of narrative that was set in Tamil Nadu post Jayalalitha's death. Still Jayalalitha was at DMK's opposition was more concerned about Jayalalitha and ADMK rule as such. They didn't pinpoint or blame the Modi government for anything or most of the things. But then since Jayalalitha's passing, ADMK has been getting brickbats saying that they are the slave government of the Modi government and things like that. So, and then they started this narrative that center is vindictive towards Tamil Nadu in a planned, focused manner. So Tamil Nadu has been given a raw deal in most of the things. And hence they kept this narrative alive in the last 4 years, post Jayalalitha's death, 4-5 years. And according to their own readings, that helped them in the massive Lok Sabha election victory and in the assembly election victory, where the focus was anti-Modi and anti-center per se, rather than anti-EPS government. So that's a narrative that is still continuing. And once DMK has come to power, they have come to power, they to cover up their inefficiencies and say unable to fulfill their own electoral promises, they are blaming the center for everything. That center is not giving GST dues compensation. Center is not focused on Tamil Nadu. Center is not helping Tamil Nadu in many of the things. It is against the state's autonomy. It is against the sentiments of Tamil people. It is against Tamil language. And all these narrative has been brought alive in the last 1 year. So this infrastructure project, as I said, the medical colleges and now this 31,000 crore infrastructure projects obviously will give a lot of, a good image of the center towards Tamil people. And I think the DMK government and Mr. Stalin did not want that to happen. So that's why on that stage, it's a government function. Generally, you don't see these kinds of political narratives or political discussions happening in a government function. Party function can be different, or another casual meet or a press conference or a one-to-one discussion are different. But when the center when the center and the state are together in this and inaugurating a lot of project or a lot of projects, generally it's a very sober, subtle, and even in some ways a kind of a boring function that happens for 1 hour, where people just talk about the project, explain the project, what it holds good for the people, and what is coming up, things like that. It's more of a very optic related function. Generally, we know the government functions. So that's how we have seen it. People don't take digs. People don't try to score brownie points in a government function as such. But here the state government is the opposition ruled, very aggressive opposition ruled state, and then state government, and then the center is there. So in this stage, the chief minister bringing up issues that have a history behind it. When I say history behind it, let it be Kachativu, let it be NEET, let it be GST compensation, and let it be the other issues, the Tamil language issue as such. For all these things, the center has been consistently blamed by this DMK when they were in opposition, and now the government for carrying a vindictive approach towards it. So when those are the issues, when you have a history of blaming the center, when you have a history of blaming Modi for not fulfilling these or for not satisfying the government's needs or the party's needs on these issues, you bringing it up in the presence of the prime minister is really insulting. So that's what put off a lot of people. That's what put off Mr. Annamalai and the BJP supporters, because you have done this, you have placed this request when you met the prime minister and the home minister and the other concerned ministers, Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, one-to-one. When Mr. Stalin has been to Delhi a couple of times, he has met them and reiterated their position on this. DMK MPs have met Mr. T.R. Balu and the allies, Mr. Tirumavalavan and others, met Mr. Amit Shah and then said, this is the stand of us in need, please give an exemption. the finance minister, PTR, Painivel Tyagarajan, has met Nirmala Sitharaman, and then he has placed his concerns on GST compensation and news. And Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman has clarified her position repeatedly. So when all this has been done and dusted, when you know the center's position on all these things, and especially even on Kachati, it's not something that's happened during Mr. Modi's time. It was given away during Indira Gandhi's time, and then at that time DMK was in alliance with Indira Gandhi. Right. So at that time, and it's been there for so many decades and years, and now Sri Lanka is passing through a crisis. And to demand the retrieval of Kachati, that time, this time is purely political. And all these, the Kachati, NEET and GST are all purely political issues that has been kept boiling in Tamil Nadu the last 4 years, and Modi and BJP government at the center has been blamed for it. So that's why it is not right. It was not right of Mr. Stalin to bring it up. Otherwise, you could have spoken about infrastructure projects, because there's time, place, and context to every speech, especially when it is involving the presence of the Prime Minister, the Governor, and the Chief Minister. And you blame the Governor for not giving assent to the NEET bill, and he is sitting there. Things like this, right? So there is context, there is place, there is time. That's why that speech was not very appropriate in many, according to many people. So that's why people are put off. It should have been a very cohesive approach should have been taken. A cooperative approach should have been taken. You could have raised some. If there are some bottlenecks in some infrastructure projects, you could have spoken about that. That would have still been fine. Yeah. If you could have placed a request for more infrastructure projects to Tamil Nadu, that would have still been fine. But there is no connection to the infrastructure projects inauguration and NEET and GST. Is that the stage to raise all these? So that's why, according to me and according to many of us, it's wrong.
I also would agree with that, because I thought it was not very statesmanly. But again, he might have his own reasons for doing it. No idea. Yeah. Or political compulsion.
He was just playing to the gallery. In my view, he was just playing to the gallery. It was purely political. And Mr. Annamalai is very right to again give a political response to it. And since they had given this promise of abolishing NEET, the moment they come to power and they know a secret, Mr. Udayanidhi Stalin had during his campaign speech spoken about he knowing a secret which will abolish NEET immediately. Since people have started questioning the government and all state government and all these, Mr. Stalin was, according to me, was compelled to talk about this in such a public platform. So it is purely their political miscalculations and mismanagement that has led to Mr. Stalin playing to the gallery and going political in a government function.
So, sir, let's go a little bit more detail into what Mr. Stalin brought out in his list. Okay, one is Kachati. So we know the history of Kachati, what happened there, whose government was there, okay, who was in alliance with them, DMK was in alliance with them, and all that. But what has DMK done specifically for Kachati before going and asking the center to intervene now?
So since this deals with a territory that is now Sri Lanka's per se, primarily, a state government cannot do much. But what DMK could have done is that for 15 years, they were in alliance with the central government. So with Vajpayee's time, 1999 to 2004, and then 2004 to 2014 UPA. Did you hear them raise this issue any time? The governments were dependent on DMK support completely. So had DMK threatened that if you do not solve this in the next, say, 1 year or 2 years time, we would withdraw support, a government would have at least tried something. But they were keeping silent for 15 years. And before that UF government, Devagowda and Gujarat 2 years. And before that VP Singh's government of 1 year. None of this, during none of these governments, say the time that they lasted, DMK did nothing to raise this issue per se. They kept it alive in the public space through, say, the campaigns or things like that. When election happens, they will say that we will retrieve Kachati. But when they were in power, all they were bothered about was getting plum portfolios and then enjoying the power and all the benefits that comes with it. So this is the double speak or the hypocrisy or double standards that DMK has. You didn't do anything when you were the government was literally on toes because of the support that you had to give them. And you always used to claim that we were the persons or we were the party that was selecting the prime minister or the president. The prime minister was selected basis the finger pointing that we did. So you had all these campaigns going on. So if you could select the prime minister of the country or the president of the country, and if the chairperson of UPA, Sonia Gandhi, was obeying you so much, if she was so accommodative, then why didn't you raise Kachati? So that's a moot point here. And now Sri Lanka is going through a crisis. The entire world knows what kind of crisis Sri Lanka is going through. And as a neighboring country, we are doing all that we can to help them come out of the situation. At this time, to raise Kachati to Sri Lanka is I don't know what. It's morally, ethically not right. And even as per the diplomatic standards and the traditions that are there, to raise even that now would be really a boomerang for the government, and China will just come and sit. So that way, I think DMK is involved in double standards and hypocrisy on the Kachevati issue.
Got it. Coming to NEET, I don't think it's sustainable, right? But what is DMK's outlook when they're keeping on reinforcing this topic? What is the issue?
So NEET, so there are certain things that are actually non-starter or electorally not say beneficial, but people keep those issues alive. So one of those things is actually NEET. Say for example, even today we see the news that's coming in where compared to last year, 30,000 more students have applied for NEET in Tamil Nadu. So I think it's 1,70,000 or something like that. So 1,40,000 plus. So that's the kind of number that we are looking at compared to the previous year, which means that students and parents are convinced with NEET, and more students are appearing, and more students are appearing in the Tamil language, taking the exam in Tamil language. So people have come to terms with it, people have accepted it, and people are happy about it. Because pre-NEET, these guys, the DMK, the allies claim that NEET is against social justice, NEET is against the poor and things like that. But pre-NEET is what the medical college admission was against social justice and against the poor. Because a simple, we all have spoken, and I've spoken in a lot of forums on the A.K. Rajan committee report. I just exposed whatever was there in terms of data in the A.K. Rajan committee report. So keeping that aside, if you just see the kind of biasness or skewed admission that was happening in Tamil Nadu, pre-NEET, only 4 districts sent probably 80 to 85% of the students to medical colleges. So only 4 districts, which is your Namakkal, your Krishnagiri, your Dharmaburi, and your Erode. And we all call this in Tamil Nadu the broiler chicken kind of schools that are there, where people are put up in hostels. Classes start at 4 a.m. in the morning, go till 10 p.m., 11 p.m. in the night. And then people are just given to mug up the syllabus and then crack their 12th board and then get admission into medical colleges. Just 4 districts, because the kind of schooling that is there, the culture that is there is this. And these schools are situated in rural areas, but the schools are all private schools. The schools are charge a bomb for us in terms of fees. So only the rich and the affordable can get their students admitted. And I know personally students who have studied in places like Chennai, Coimbatore till 10th standard and moved their wards. The parents have moved their student wards to 11th and 12th in these kind of cities. Have you ever seen this? Generally, people move from small towns and villages to the cities, big cities. But if you're in Coimbatore and Chennai and studying till 10th standard, why would you move to Namakkal or Dharmaburi or Krishnagiri, which are backward districts? Dharmaburi is one of the most backward regions. And to these kind of areas, and admit your wards in such kind of schools for 11th and 12th. And people have told me that's openly, pre-NEET I'm talking about. That's only for medical college admissions. Because if you study in these schools, then your medical college admission is guaranteed. And there's an education mafia that operates these schools. And that mafia is what is behind this entire anti-NEET narrative in Tamil Nadu. And there's a lot of money floating around for this, obviously. And that's what the narrative is all about. These the schools from these 4 districts have lost their advantage, have lost their mojo. And today, people from across all districts in Tamil Nadu, post-NEET, after NEET, students from across all the districts in Tamil Nadu are getting admission into medical colleges. And with the ADMK government 7.5 reservation for government school students, Never like before, government school students are cracking NEET and getting into medical colleges. Pre-NEET, it was less than, say, 3% or 2%. And many years, it was less than 1% also government school students getting medical college admissions. So NEET has been a blessing. The 7.5 reservation by the ADMK government, which was suggested by JP Nadda when he was a health minister in 2017. So that's the blessing for the poor, for the rural students in Tamil Nadu. So this has exposed the DMK government and their allies narrative about NEET being anti-poor, anti-government school students, anti-Tamil medium students narrative. And DMK, as I told you before, in the run-up to the elections, the campaign, they said, we know a secret. We will come to power and then put a signature and we know how to abolish NEET. And all those have been questioned, even in the local body elections. During the campaign trail, people started questioning Udayanithi Stalin as to you gave an assurance, what happened? So people have started questioning also about that. So that's why DMK is off guard. They are under huge pressure to fulfill the promise, and they take to every platform or every available opportunity to talk about NEET and keep the issue alive. But I think in a year or two, they will get reconciled to the fact that this is here to stay, and they will have to eat crow with regards to NEET as such.
Yeah. So looks like more than Tamil Nadu Makkal, okay, Aam Aadmi we say, right? More than them, it's more of the private institutions that are worried of NEET now, right? So it looks like it.
Yeah. So a lot of money used to change hands in this, and people in politics, whether they are MPs or MLAs, or even if they are not an MP or MLA, if they carry some heft, those guys used to make money in terms of medical college admissions. So all that is gone.
Fees and all that.
Yeah, all that is gone per se now. Though some kind of fees, capitation and all is there, but the kind of money that these guys used to make, because they could guarantee a seat. There was no entrance, so they could guarantee a seat, and they used to take bribe for it or money for it, and then get an admission. Today it can't happen that way. So the capitation fees of the colleges are there, but the kind of money that the politicians were making is not happening, and that's what is adding adding salt to the wounds that is already there.
Right, totally. So what is this about this Ondri Arase and talking about that 13 times, okay, during his, say, 15-minute speech? I don't know. So what is this whole thing about?
So this is, I think they have a wrong notion, or they know that this doesn't make sense, but then they just to score brownie points that they are using it, and we know where DMK comes from. Initially, they advocated separatism in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s till the China War, early 60s till China War, and then DMK and Annadurai were forced to abandon that Dravida Nadu demand because of the Indo-China War, and then the changes that happened in the political landscape in India. So they dropped the demand. But their DNA comes from that, separatism, and their claim of Tamilians or Dravidians are separate from the rest of the folks in country, which is wrong, has no scientific basis, has no scientific basis, has no any kind of authenticity to it, or any kind of evidence or proof for such claims. But they kept on harping on it, and their entire political existence is built on this narrative that the state or the people are different from the rest of the country, anti-Hindi, anti-Hindu, anti-India, anti-center, North versus South, Tamil versus Hindi, Tamil versus Sanskrit, and all this. So the as a continuum of such narrative, they have picked this up in the last, say, 2-3 years. So initially this came out on social media when DMK was in opposition. So even when Jayalalitha was there, the DMK was not talking about Ondri Arasu. Even when Karunanidhi was the chief minister, they've all spoken about Madhya Arasu Center, and they never called it a union, referred the center to as a union. So today they are doing this to harp on the point, or to make strong claims that India has never been one nation. It's a union of states, because they talk about this constitute, the statement or the sentence in the constitution that says India is a union of states. But they stop with that. They don't go beyond that. They just stop with this sentence because that's useful for them. And they build this false narrative that all these regions were always separate, were never one. and only British united these regions into one, and with constitution we became one country and things like that, which is factually wrong. There's no historical basis towards it, because we know how India has been one nation over thousands of years under various kings. Administratively could have been different units, but culturally, civilizationally, uh, and historically, we have been one nation. This entire region has been one in a lot of terms as such. Administratively, there could have been different models, because democracy was not there then. So obviously, every region, every country was like this. There was never, then the modern political map of the world cannot exist if you have to go back thousands of years ago. But they want to build this narrative. So that's why they are talking about India was never one and it's a union of states, so that they can keep this their separatist agenda or their narrative to the people alive, that we are different and we don't have anything in common. It's just be out of magnanimity or out of compulsion or out of British administration rule that we are with the other regions in India. So that's why they want to do it. But then I have a different take on this. I mean, because you have to hold them a googly, right? And so how I see is that the word Vandriyam is more unifying than Madhya. Madhya means center. Vandriyam means union, which is a translation of union. Union means there's more unity. Center means the center is if you draw a circle, the center point, you have a lot of distance to the other regions. But then if you call it a union, then that means there's more unity in it. So the more DNK talks about Vandriyam, it means that we are Vandra Irkom. So that's how I tell people. It's okay, let them call it Vandriyam, let them call it a union. The more unity is coming through it. So that's how I see it. They think that they do it for the first benchers who are clapping for it. But Tamil Nadu is beyond these first benches and beyond these claps. Tamil Nadu is as nationalist, if not more nationalist than other states. Tamil Nadu still stands a lot of huge number of people contingent to the armed forces. Tamil Nadu has always stood up to the nationalists, supported the nationalists in a big way. Tamil Nadu has sent so many freedom fighters, martyrs in the freedom struggle, and people from Tamil Nadu, even before the 1857 revolt. We know the Marudhu Pandyas, Marudhu Sagodaras, the Upaturais, the Katabomans, the Velunachiyars, and all these people who raised the banner of revolt and independence much before people in the north and other regions did. So Tamil Nadu has been more nationalist, most nationalist in terms of the Tamil people have been more nationalist and most nationalist, like any other region in the world. So DNK is just playing to their own gallery, which is a very small number. The separatist group, the DK group, and the others for a very small number. The first benchers who are clapping just because Stalin keeps telling Vandriyam instead of Madhya. It doesn't make a difference on ground, is my understanding.
Definitely. And the only other person that is also talking about this is Mr. Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi in London.
Yeah, he has started talking the DNK's language, which is very saddening. He should read his great-grandfather's Discovery of India and what Nehru has written about India as one nation across years, across generations. So had he read that, even if he have read that, I don't know whether he's imbibed and understood. He should read it again, understand it and imbibe it. And if he does that, he will not talk DMK's language or DK's language, telling India has never been one nation, we are a union of states. So I think a lot of DMK's influence has come in to Rahul Gandhi, which doesn't augur well for the Congress party as such. Because otherwise, it should be Indian Union Congress, like how it is Indian Union Muslim League and not Indian National Congress. Why is it Indian National Congress and not Indian Union Congress?
Exactly.